First of all, thanks very much for doing this. It's a pleasure to meet you and get the chance to talk to you.
Thank you, Jack. I'm delighted that you came in, and it's delighted to get a chance to talk to you.
What were your thoughts when you were contacted about becoming a laureate of the Academy? What did you think?
Well, I think I was both surprised and obviously very complimented and very honored to do it. Frankly, I really took it as this was an honor that should go to the family, and I just had the good fortune of being the person that was accepted because this has been a family involvement as far as we're concerned for a long, long time.
Well, let's begin with the family, shall we? Let's talk a little bit about your early years. Your father got quite a figure here in Chicago. What were some of the things that you learned from him about values as you were growing up that have helped you?
I think everything that with reference to values, I really learned from him and his brothers. They started with absolutely nothing, and just by dint of tremendously hard work and real effort, but real ingenuity, they succeeded in a country that gave them the opportunity to succeed. And in doing so, they did it on the basis of not only being able, but doing it honorably and honestly, and because they believed in it. Now, the morality was something that they believed in very, very deeply, and it was just part of their life. So they didn't have to teach it in words as far as the next generation is concerned. You learn by example, and you learned what to do and what not to do.
Well, let's take an example of that. Let's say, what would your father have done in a certain, let's say, business dealing or personal dealing that you would say, boy, that was the right thing to do now that I look back on it?
I guess I don't know if I can give you individual examples, but on a general basis, very definitely. Dad had a different, I think really a different basis of dealing with people than most that I have seen. He really believed that you couldn't make a good deal first with the wrong people. So if you had any real concern about the honesty of the people on the other side of the table, forget about it. There'd be no transaction that would be worth it. And the second part, which I think is very unusual, is he really felt that if you weren't a better friend of the person with whom you were dealing after the deal was over, it really wasn't a very successful deal. That it was a question of being ingenious. You didn't have to be sharp. You didn't have to be real tough. You had to be fair. And he felt that very definitely. Now, he was smart enough to understand what was his own ability allowed him to determine, to make very, very good transactions. And that's what he taught as far as the rest of the company was concerned and as far as we were concerned.
What was the business that they got into when they first got?
Originally, actually, it was my dad's older brother who just died very shortly after. He founded Material Service, which, as a building material company, what they did is they merely ordered sand and gravel and stone on railroad cars to a sidetrack, and they would unload that with shovels into what originally was horse-drawn wagons and then trucks, and deliver them to jobs. That Material Service was founded in 1919. It grew. Of course, it was during a very good time economically in the United States right after the First World War, but by their efforts, there wasn't just the economic time allowed them to succeed, but basically it was their ingenuity and their hard work. It was both my dad. He had his older brother who really founded it and then died very shortly thereafter. Another older brother who was in charge of the operations, and one other brother who was a medical doctor but also was in charge of the real estate side, and the three of them together built Material Service from 1919 on into the company that we eventually merged into General Dynamics in 1960.
You didn't take the direct route into it, as I've read. You took time to go to school, get degrees in chemical engineering. Am I right on that?
And worked all the time. I mean, concurrently. You didn't just go to school. You worked in summers. You worked Christmas time, and weekends were usually spent, part of them anyway, going to the plants or the quarries or things like that, either with Dad or with Irv or with the other people in the company. The business part of it was ingrained in the personal side. There was no differentiation between your personal life and the business life of the family.
How did that help you become a better businessman?
I don't know if it helps you become a better businessman as such. I'm not really sure. Other than you live what the business is. It's part of you. It's not something that you show up for at 8:30 in the morning and then leave at 5 o'clock at night. It is something that's part of your everyday life. So I think you learn the business intimately from top to bottom. There was no part of the company that I or my brothers didn't work in. I think the part that I really got the biggest kick out of is, I guess in the 70s, I can say that there wasn't a superintendent of a plant that I hadn't worked for in the field in the time that I was growing up.
How does that happen?
Just pause for a second?
Sure. All righty. Well, as you were saying, there was very little differentiation between your personal life and business life. A lot of people, in different circumstances could have not played such a close role with the company, but it strikes me that that wasn't even something you considered. You loved the business and took to it.
No question about it. It was something that we had the opportunity to participate in, and I must admit, never gave thought of not doing it, just appreciated the opportunity of going to be able to do it and did so.
You said that there wasn't a superintendent that you hadn't worked for before as a younger man. How did that help you in knowing what the company was all about and the company culture, what you wanted it to do?
Well, I think the way it really helps is when you have that kind of a relationship, personal relationship, and the company really is a family company. It's not a corporation. The extended family is Material Service entirely, and even though it's part of General Dynamics today, I think if you talk to the fellows in the field today, they will tell you the same thing. They look at it as a family operation. But in answer to your question, what it did is that relationship gave, and I'm not the only one, so I'm really speaking for really everyone else, gave me or anyone else the opportunity to go back and talk to those people on a very different basis. They're the ones that really know what should be done, how it should be done, what is being done wrong, and they're the ones that really give you the information and the ability to not have to work through an organization, but in essence, if you need an answer to a question, you can go to almost any level and talk to them because you know them and they know you on a first-name basis.
How does this translate into, I wouldn't say a code of business ethics, but a framework for how your companies want to do business with themselves and with other corporations in terms of the way we're going to deal with you as honest business people?
I think it translates very directly. Loyalty is a two-way street. You can't ask for it from the people that just because they work for you. It is something. This is something you don't demand. It is something that you earn, and you should earn. So the relationship goes both ways. And if it does, it has to be an honest relationship and the people in the company know what your values are. They have the same values, and then that translates into everything that you do on the outside.
Tell me how General Dynamics entered the picture from a company that you were basically working in the building and construction and chemicals areas. How did General Dynamics enter the picture in terms of defense contracting and so many different things?
It's just one of those things that happened. It was suggested to my dad a couple of times, and finally we decided that we would expand our horizons and go into, at that time, GD was the premier space company, in addition to submarines and airframes and other things. We did not know. This becomes really too long a story to go through here because GD was on its way to going broke at the time that we merged in 1960 and had no idea that. So it was a very unfortunate merger at that time. We found out the problems that existed there. We did not find out about until a couple of years later, and had some very, very difficult years afterwards. But it's on the right track now.
I would say so. How did you turn the company around?
Well, you know, we made this mistake twice. The first time, I have to say, it was turned around by my dad, literally singly. He really took over in about 1963, 64. He took over the whole financial side, and he really saved the company on an individual basis. We really had nothing to do with it back here. We were running material service and the rest of it. We left General Dynamics in 1966, which is a story unto itself, and then we came back in 1970 and took the company back at that particular time. It also was in great difficulty. And then again, it wasn't just my father at that time. We hired David Lewis, who was with McDonnell Douglas, who was absolutely a spectacular aerospace CEO. And David is probably as responsible as anybody for the development of the equipment for GD, of which we're so proud. And we handled the financial side, David handled the operating side, and from 1970 on, David came with us, I think, about 1971. From then on, it has been a success story. It's true, but that's because of tremendous number of people's effort and work. But we went into GD twice. Neither time, looking back at it, we were foolish both times that we did it. But it's come out all right now.
You must feel a great sense of pride and patriotism in what General Dynamics has been able to do in terms of it's really helping to end the Cold War. It's such an integral part of the nation's defense with submarines, with aircraft, so many other things. How does that play a role in, I suppose, your patriotism play a role in what you've been able to do with the companies?
Well, it's something of which we are very, very proud. It's, you know, like all of us, we're very proud of this country. We're very thrilled with the opportunity that it has given to us, and to be part of the effort to defend it. As you know, most of the things that General Dynamics make are made in the hope that it'll never be used. The purpose is not to have it used. If all of the equipment that's made is never used, that would be wonderful. But you have, in this world, we live in a very, very dangerous world. It wasn't just before the Cold War, probably live in a more dangerous world today after the Cold War than did before. And this type of equipment is required for defense of the United States. And it is a very thrilling thing and a very satisfying thing to be part of a company that produces it.
Well, you make a good point. The Cold War ended, I suppose, for most intents and purposes in 1989, 1990. The Soviet Union has gone away, but now we're faced with an entirely different set of problems around the world. How does a company like if you were to explain this to a member of the public, why should we still be building weapon systems and defense systems when it seemed that our major adversary went away?
The major adversary went away, but remember, that adversary had control over what today we would call rogue states. You didn't have the problems with a Syria or an Iraq or a Libya before because of the influence that the Soviet Union had over those countries at that time. Now, each of those countries is independent, and therefore the need for a strong defense is more required than it was before, as we've seen in Kosovo today, as we've seen what happened in Iraq. We live in unfortunately, a very dangerous world.
When we first came in, we were looking at some of the models in the office, and you were telling me about the F-16 and the Trident-class submarines and the Seawolves. We talked about that. What systems have given you the most interest and satisfaction of being able to get those into the inventory?
Jack, remember, I didn't design any of these, and I do not want to take credit for the absolutely spectacular equipment that is up there. A lot of very, very capable people. I've just gotten the benefit of being associated with them. But of all of I think of the equipment that is there, I think the one that is you've mentioned the two that give you the greatest pride. The F-16 as a lightweight fighter, which is still the premier low-cost fighter in the inventory today, 25 years later, and what we've been able to produce as far as in the submarine inventory. At Groton, most of the design work on subs are produced more than anyone else. They are produced, as you know, both at Newport News, which does a spectacular production job, as does Groton, but the engineering side of it is almost done all at Groton. And this is something we're very, very proud of, because that piece of equipment is the ultimate stealth and is the real piece of defensive equipment throughout the entire world.
Now we're talking about submarines.
Submarines. Right.
Seawolf in particular, or?
No, and I don't think Seawolf in particular. I think whether it be the 688 attack sub or the Trident or Seawolf. There are only, as you know, 3 Seawolves. So it's really Trident and 688 as far as the subs are concerned.
Well, they never knew where we were or what we were up to then.
And they are not supposed to. That's the idea.
I'd like to turn a little bit now, if I could, to philanthropic work. Did you get a sense of that from your father as to what a corporation's public responsibilities were as well?
Yes, I would say both from Dad and from his brothers. It just wasn't a corporate responsibility. I think I would say it's as much of a personal responsibility. We've had the opportunity, especially during the last 50 years, to prosper in a way that never existed before. And really almost from a selfish standpoint, I guess there's 2 standpoints. From a selfish standpoint, one, you want to perpetuate that for your children. And if you want to perpetuate it, you really owe back to the society as a requirement. It's really a debt to perpetuate it. And so the giving back is something that is a debt. It's not something that you should be thanked for.
What particular areas did you identify that we can really do something there? This is something that's going to really help people.
I don't think there's any one particular area. Obviously, growing up in the Jewish tradition, the heritage and the tradition is tremendously important to us. So that all reference the state of Israel and Jewish causes are number one priority as far as we're concerned. But it isn't the only one. We're very much involved in the city of Chicago because we've had the good fortune to live here, the state of Illinois, and other things nationally. So you really owe it to all the things that you can participate in to contribute back a portion of what you've been able to obtain in this economy.
The state of Israel has been very special to you. Can you speak to why it holds such a special place in your heart?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess you would, almost anyone that's Jewish would say, give you the same kind of answer. This has been a nomad tribe that has been driven around and persecuted in many ways for, what, 3 years? If you start with Egypt, you're talking about 3,000 years. You go back to Abraham, it's 4,000 years. Finally, for them to have a place to call their own, to have a homeland, is something that had been hoped for and dreamed of for many, many years, and especially after the Holocaust. It becomes something that is very, very dear to everyone's heart who is Jewish.
It must be a special feeling then to be honored by the state of Israel and its many institutions for the things you've done on its behalf.
Oh, very, very much so. Very much so. But again, it's the opportunity to be able to help something like that and to participate in is the real satisfaction.
Are you pleased to see the way that it appears we're finally on the road to peace there?
Hopefully it is so. It's a fragmented situation and a very difficult situation. Whether they are on the road to peace now or not, I think we're just going to have to wait and see. We don't know.
We can hope.
We can hope.
I'd like to go back to some of the remarks you made before the Academy. To borrow from your speech, in fact, how can a free, non-controlled, market-driven economy be a caring society? I know that was something that was very important to you.
I think it's so only if the people want to make it so. Those people that have been able to prosper really have to realize that for the perpetuation of that society and for their own good, for their children, their grandchildren, that they need to make sure that they put things back into the society and have it continue the way in which it existed while they're through their business life. So you're not doing it for a reason to be thanked. You're doing it to perpetuate for the next generation.
Exactly right. I've heard many of these sentiments from folks like Bob Malott, Pat Ryan, who've been able to do a lot of these things. What has given you the most satisfaction from these activities?
I don't know if I can really say there's any one thing that has given. You mean from the philanthropic activities?
Well, let's start with. They're so closely aligned with General Dynamics, for example. Let's take it in two parts. In your business life, what's given you the most satisfaction?
Well, I think in our business life, the most satisfaction has been the regeneration of General Dynamics into the type of company it has become and the type of products that it has made. During the Gulf War, there were more GD products than anything else. You start cruise missile, the tanks, of course, the F-16. There were so many of our products that were there that it really is very satisfying to have them there, basically for the defense of the United States.
In terms of the philanthropic work?
Well, maybe the philanthropic work gets to the personal side of it, and greatest satisfaction is something I think you would expect. As really as my family is the far and away the most satisfying part. I happen to have a greatest choice I ever made originally was my choice of parents. The next best one was my wife, and We happen to have 7 absolutely great kids. I say 7, I really should say 14. They're all married, and the spouses are equally as good, and it's really a thrill to see the kind of people that they have turned out to be. That's the real satisfaction.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't get any better than that when you see something, you see a family turn out well. That's the best.
No question. We have been very, very fortunate, and we're thrilled by the type of people that they've become.
We've covered most of the areas that I wanted to get into. Is there anything that I haven't touched upon that you feel would be important for me to know about?
No, it's just I think we've had the opportunity to live in this country during absolutely the best of times. And that opportunity, especially both as a person, as an American, and as a minority. And you really have to say thank you and show your thanks for that opportunity. We've been very, very lucky.
That's a perfect way to wrap up. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's check our tape and make sure